Hey, Indian Creek 8th grade students, welcome back to our daily e-learning lessons. It is Thursday, May 7th. It's Cardigan Thursday. I hope everyone's having a great start to their day so far. And let's just jump into our daily updates. So yesterday we had 38 out of 51 people who submitted their ELA attendance. It's a little bit down from where we were at earlier in the week, but still a pretty good solid number. 38 seems to kind of be like that cutoff point where we always get at least that many people. So thank you to those of you who did turn it in. We also had 12 people who have turned in their allegory chart so far. No big deal if you didn't, just a reminder that once you're done with it, which we went over the last section of characters during the stream yesterday, so once you're done with that, just go ahead and turn that in so you can get credit. And then the Kahoot review that was running yesterday, we had 7 people who did it at least as of about 45 minutes or so ago. So maybe 1 or 2 people got it in under the, just under the time cutoff, but we did have 7 people who did it. Maybe not as many as I would hope, but I'll still take it. So thank you to those 7 who took the time to get that done. Then our class plan for today, we'll go over the Google form for today that was shared out for attendance. We'll be talking about Chapter 10 of Animal Farm today. Lots going on at the end of the story. There is a Chapter 10 writing response that is required today. Hopefully that's pretty clear about the way that it was set in Google Classroom. It doesn't say optional. That's the assignment for today, is the writing response. The optional assignments for today are the quizzes reviews, so we'll just have a reminder of those. We'll talk again about the Decades Project for Social Studies. That little bit there at the bottom is probably not going to change anytime soon, and that'll be that for Thursday. But before we get into any of that, I just wanted to talk about some of the journal highlights from yesterday where you were asked to write about something that you feel is underrated. And you were just kind of given free rein. You could have picked a movie, a job, a food, just anything in general that you think is underrated and why. And I was able to break the responses up into things related to entertainment and then kind of everything else. And there were actually some repeated answers in there. So if you see anything with a number in parentheses next to it, that was the number of students who submitted that for their answer. Obviously, everything else just had 1 student. So some things related to entertainment, the movie A Walk to Remember, and with an E. We also had 2 different people who talked about the fact that authors or musicians or artists seem to be underrated. I think in the sense that they don't always get credit for what they do. For example, you might read a book and have no idea who the author is or how much time he or she put in writing it. And then kind of the same thing with musicians and artists. I would think especially in terms of songwriters, the people who perform songs very often are not those who write them. And so those people, the writers of the songs, I feel are often underrated or even forgotten. The game Paladins actually had 3 people who wrote about that one. 2 different people mentioned that quality YouTubers are underrated. I don't really know if what the cutoff or what the distinction is for quality versus not quality. I do agree that there are a lot of YouTube channels that put out a lot of junk or just time wasting stuff. Hopefully nobody feels like that about this channel, but reading in general, Vampire Diaries is an underrated show. Baby Driver is an underrated movie. I would totally agree. I very much enjoyed that movie. What Happened to Monday? Someone mentioned old video games. I believe it was specifically old Call of Duty games. I do feel that, in our world where with these series, there are constantly new games coming out, the old ones are often forgotten too quickly. And then, of course, the classically underrated YouTube channel of Droning and Going, which we all know and agree is very, very underrated, of course. Then in terms of some other areas that people wrote about, in terms of food, someone wrote about Takis as the best brand of chips or like snack, or however you want to describe that. I know a lot of people like them, but I don't know how many people would put them up there as the absolute best. So that would definitely fall under underrated. Um, Cream cheese icing and A1 steak sauce is a combination. I'm sure all of you can probably guess who put that one in there. Seafood in general, I would agree. I love seafood, but I feel like it often gets a bad rap. And then Brussels sprouts as a vegetable, which I would also agree with, because I feel like if you cook them right, Brussels sprouts can be awesome. In terms of jobs, we had two different people who mentioned that garbage collectors are underrated. I agree. It doesn't sound like a very glamorous job, but very, very important and actually pays pretty well. Fast food and retail workers, especially obviously in our current situation, I feel like is a very underrated or maybe underappreciated profession. Farmers, people who build electronics, nurse practitioners, and then veterans, some other professions that are cited as underrated. I totally agree, especially the person who mentioned veterans, mentioned how much they're paid. Could not agree more, just because that's something that not that many people are willing to make that sacrifice and that time, and their pay is not nearly on par with what it could be or what it should be. And then just some other things people mentioned in terms of being underrated or underappreciated. Taking care of sea life. There are all those statistics about, like coral reefs dying off and animals going extinct. Family time is something that's underrated. I feel like, again, in our current climate, hopefully there are a lot of people who are gaining a new respect for family time. And then we actually had two different people who mentioned gymnastics, and I think more specifically the amount of time that it takes to be really, really good at gymnastics. And I think you could say that for a lot of sports, but I do understand where gymnastics is coming from, just because of the sheer number of hours per week that the really elite gymnasts have to spend in the gym. And I think just to have an appreciation for the strength, the body control, there's just a lot that goes into it. And for something that, for whatever reason, there seem to be a lot of people who might not feel like it's a sport. I don't know how you could say it's not a sport. But so I do understand where these two students were coming from with that. So those were the journals from yesterday, talking about some of the underrated things that we see in the world. And so now let's just jump over to our Google form for today. End of year plan still there at the top. We're going to be talking about Chapter 10 of Animal Farm today, with just a reminder to turn in your allegory chart, and that there is a written response for Chapter 10 as well. We'll be looking at that individually in a minute. Quizzes reviews, same as last time. Tomorrow will be the quote-unquote quiz for Unit 11. So there are 3 reviews running today. One that's the Units 1 through 5 word roots, another that's Units 6 through 10 word roots, and then one that's on Unit 11. So you can do one, you can do all, you can do none. They're optional, but just they're out there for those of you who would like that extra practice. And then finally, part 3, pretty easy attendance response, one where you get a choice. Today, I just want you to write about a situation where you either had the best or, I guess, very, very good luck, or the worst luck. So you can choose which one you're going with: really, really good luck day or good luck event, or bad luck. And just, tell your story. You don't have to go into super long detail, but I thought this would just be an interesting one for people to get some stories out there. So that is the Google form for today. And so now we can jump over into talking about the end of Animal Farm, which everyone yesterday read. And hopefully you saw some things that you can connect to the writing response today. And just interesting to see where we've come from the beginning of the book to the end of the book. Not really a book that ends on a very pleasant note, but at the same time, when you think about the fact that this is an allegory for life in Russia under Joseph Stalin, you wouldn't really expect it to end on a great, happy note, because Joseph Stalin was a tyrant and a dictator, and life was not good under him, and it was that way for a very long time. So today we're talking about Chapter 10, which I just put as a title, The Revolution Comes Full Circle. And we'll talk about the meaning of that with our writing response. But let's jump into a summary for Chapter 10 of Animal Farm. So, excuse me, years pass on Animal Farm until there are few who can remember days before the rebellion. The windmill is finished and is used to mill corn, which makes the farm money. However, it never does provide electricity or any of the things that Snowball had originally discussed. So they're talking about building a second windmill, and maybe this one will be one that generates electricity and makes animals' lives easier. But that's not really the sense I would think that any of us get. The farm is prospering financially, but only the pigs and dogs seem to live comfortably despite providing no labor to create food. Squealer explains this much the same as he has in the past, and the animals continue on, taking pride in Squealer's promises that their lives are constantly improving and the feeling that all animals were equal. One day, the animals are shocked to see the pigs have learned to walk on their hind legs and are carrying whips. But before they can protest, the sheep begin chanting, 4 legs good, 2 legs better, having been taught so by Squealer. Benjamin soon reveals that the commandments have now gone or been erased from the barn and are instead replaced by the single maxim, all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. The pigs soon take up smoking, reading magazines and newspapers, listening to the radio, and wearing human clothes as well. Later, the pigs invite some human farmers to inspect and tour Animal Farm. During a card game that evening, the animals listen to the humans proclaim their admiration of Animal Farm's efficiency, noting that its animals work more on less food than any other group in the area. Mr. Pilkington leads the human congregation, and it is made clear that he and Napoleon are both interested in future business with each other. Napoleon addresses any lingering doubts by stating that his animals will no longer call each other comrade or honor Old Major or the old flag. In fact, Napoleon has returned the title to its original name of Manor Farm. The pigs and men return to the card game and the animals creep away. Soon, the animals hear sounds of a disagreement. They realize that Napoleon and Pilkington have both played an ace of spades and are now accusing each other of cheating. The animals looking on realize that they can no longer tell the difference between the men and the pigs. So that is the summary of Chapter 10. The sense that where the animals end the story is very much similar to where they began the story. That at the end, finally, there is no discernible difference between the men who are visiting the farm and the pigs. And we'll talk more about that, the symbolism and that moving forward. But I did just want to highlight some of the important quotes from this chapter. So years are going on. Many of the animals have passed away. And there are not many who can still remember the rebellion, if at all. This first section, the farm is more prosperous. It's better organized. They created the windmill. There's talk about building another one. But the luxuries that Snowball had talked about with the 3-day week, the electric light, the hot and cold water, these have gone by the wayside. And at the end here, it says Napoleon had denounced such ideas as contrary to the spirit of animalism. The truest happiness, he said, lay in working hard and living frugally. It's just ironic because Napoleon is not working hard. He and the pigs don't work hard. They don't live frugally. They spend their money on themselves, on whatever they want. And yet he's telling these other animals, his workers, that that's what they should be doing. So just some irony there. And it continues on to talk about that it seems that the farm has grown richer without the animals themselves becoming richer, except for the pigs and the dogs. And it goes into this bit where Squealer talks about how, the pigs have these very challenging labors working on files and reports and statistics and, all these things on sheets of paper, but the pigs and the dogs don't actually create any food for themselves, even though their appetites are always good and they're always the ones who are consuming the labors of the other animals. So this kind of is just a callback to the beginning of the story where Old Major is talking about the fact that men are the only ones on the farms who don't create food. They don't give milk or anything like that. And yet they consume what the animals make. Now you can see that the pigs and the dogs are very much in that same vein. They don't create anything themselves. They just consume what the animals create. Then there's this section here where it just talks about how life has been getting harder, but the animals on Animal Farm never give up hope. How they always are keeping in mind how lucky they are to live on Animal Farm, that it's the only farm in all of England that's owned and operated by animals, and that they just always have this respect for, animalism and the commandments and this republic of animals that they live in. And it just ends with this very, very sad line that says, "No creature called any other creature master, all animals were equal." When, it's very sad because that's what these animals are thinking. And here I'll scroll down just so you all can see it. I can see my head's blocking it. But this idea that all animals are equal, obviously we know is not true, but it's just sad to see that the animals have been brainwashed to feel this way. That they're taking this great pride in living in this republic and doing so well, and yet all animals are not equal. And so we as readers can understand something that the animals on the farm cannot. All right, then this next section here is just the part that I had mentioned a bit before, where one day Clover has this moment where she freaks out, and it's because she sees a pig walking on its hind legs. And at first it's Squealer, and then it comes out where Napoleon and all the other pigs are walking on hind legs and carrying whips. And, this is a moment here, this section that says the animals finally are thinking about and beginning to formulate some sort of protest. But before they can say anything, the sheep come out and begin chanting, "4 legs good, 2 legs better. 4 legs good, 2 legs better." And just this whole sense that, as we've seen a number of times, just when the animals are able to formulate some of their own thoughts and are maybe going to speak out or act out against the pigs, they're cut down. And obviously, just of course, the irony that the sheep themselves are walking on 4 legs, and so they're chanting 4 legs good, 2 legs better. Just again reinforces the allegory between, the sheep and the humans who were brainwashed or tricked into following Stalin. So now we've seen the pigs. They're not doing any physical labor. Now they're walking on 2 legs and they're carrying whips. And it comes to the point where there is only one commandment left on the barn. And it says, all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. Now, hopefully, I know you all can see the irony in this, because equal, if you think back to mathematically, equal means the same. There is no such thing as more equal. If you have 5 and 5, they're equal. You can't get any more equal than that. But again, just this, obviously what's communicated by this line is the belief that, or the sense that these animals are living that, oh yeah, all animals are equal, but really there are some animals that are better than others, is what's being suggested. But the pigs understand that because these other animals can't think it out for themselves, when they see all animals are equal, they're going to assume all animals are actually equal, even though it's not really the case at all. All right, and then finally, we just have the last section here where the farmers are getting along with the pigs, and they're making these toasts to each other. They're talking about all these different things. There's a line from Pilkington where he says, if you have your lower animals to contend with, we have our lower classes. And he congratulates the pigs on the lower rations, the longer working hours, and just, really the pigs being able to get away with all this without taking care of the other animals at all. And so it's just obviously, clearly, the humans recognize this situation as where there is a lower class of animals, there is a separation, and just, again, it's very sad that the other animals cannot see this. Okay, and then finally, we have this speech that's given by Napoleon where he says, their sole wish is to live at peace in normal business relations with the other humans. And he talks about how he's going to get rid of the animals on the farm calling each other comrade. He's getting rid of the boar skull that was Old Major's. He's banishing the green flag of animalism, and comes down here to mention that he's not only doing all these things, but he's changing the name of Animal Farm back to the Manor Farm. And so everything that the animals had been building towards, all these symbols of animalism, are now gone, and it's really back to where we started, that it's now the Manor Farm again. And so Napoleon and all these humans drink a toast to the Manor Farm, and the animals who are watching them begin to kind of slink away, but then there's this kind of ruckus, and it becomes clear that Napoleon and Pilkington had both played an ace of spades at the same time, which those of you who play card games know there's only one of each card in the deck, so clearly one or maybe perhaps both of them are cheating. And the men and the pigs are all shouting in anger, and the animals, it said, looked from pig to man and from man to pig and from pig to man again, but already it was impossible to say which was which. Okay, so this event at the end, by the way, is an allegory for the agreement between Stalin and Winston Churchill and the other countries, the other Allied powers, leading into World War II. And this was kind of a prediction more than anything by Orwell that this agreement would not end well. It looks like they're going to get along, and then one or both of them is trying to cheat, and now they're back to fighting. That is exactly what would turn out to happen. For those of you who don't know, after World War II, there was a long period called the Cold War where communist Russia or the Soviet Union and other countries around the world, there was this, not a violent war, but this long-standing distrust that would come out of this. But that final image of the story, that the animals now can't even tell the difference between pigs and humans, is one of the most very powerful ones throughout the whole novel. All right, so those were the important quotes, and actually here I want to jump back to the slides just to show you our final barn image. All the commandments are gone, and now we just have all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. And again, we had touched on this a little bit just a couple minutes ago, so if you need to go back. But again, just that sense that this phrase in and of itself is proclaiming that animals are not equal because there is no such thing as more equal. All right, so then we can move on to the written response for today, the assignment. And it says that a revolution, or the word revolution, has two main meanings. One of them is the fundamental and relatively sudden change in political power that occurs when a population revolts against the government. So, for example, you could think of the Revolutionary War, where colonists rose up and it resulted in America becoming an independent nation. But revolution also means one complete turn around an axis. So, for example, if you're driving in your parents' car and you see a gauge that says RPMs, that's the number of times that the wheels are turning per minute, revolutions per minute. So it's this sense of, on the one hand, a revolution means a very sudden change, But on the other hand, a complete turn, a 360-degree turn means you end exactly where you started. You come all the way around back to the beginning. And so, based on the ending of Animal Farm, which definition do you think better describes the story and why? So, in other words, do you think Animal Farm as a book, as being about a revolution, is it more about the top definition, the fundamental and sudden change in political power, where people, or in this case animals, revolt against the government? Or do you feel like it's more about the story that ends basically the same place where it began? Is life on the farm for the animals different in the beginning of the story and the end of the story? Or is it basically the same or even worse? So you can take it either way, and you can explain it however you want. Some of you might even say that both aspects of a revolution play into the story. Obviously, I think that they do. And if you want to talk about it from that perspective, you can do that as well. All right, but that is the writing response for today. Is this a revolution that's a fundamental change in political power? Is it a revolution where really by the end of the story, we're back right to where we started? So use details from the story. You can use specific quotes. Obviously, that's what we're always looking for. But that is your language arts assignment for today. All right. And then obviously still be working on those decades projects for social studies. I haven't really had too many people emailing questions the last couple days, so I hope that means everyone's just plugging along with the research and finding some good things and maybe starting to think about putting together their presentation. But obviously, if something comes up where you have questions or need extra help, please let myself, Mr. Roush, Mrs. Watson know, and we'll do what we can to help guide you along. All right, then the only other thing I want to mention is this Google form that I had sent out yesterday afternoon, where I was asked to reach out to all of you to help come up with a class motto. So a motto is just like a short phrase or saying, and every year students get to pick the motto that they have, and it's printed on the 8th grade promotion booklet to celebrate you getting to move on to high school. So on this form, I would just like for you, if you have an idea of what you would like your class motto to be, to submit it here. And I gave you the last two class mottos. So the class of 2018, their motto was, "What lies behind us and what lies ahead of us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us." And then last year's class motto was, "Some people dream about success while others wake up and work hard at it." So you can think about these. Obviously, if you Google class mottos, there are a whole bunch of different ones that can come out there. And so any that you think would be good, go ahead and please submit on this form. And then by the end of today, any suggestions that we get, I will be putting onto another form and sending out to all of you to vote on. And then obviously the winning motto will be the one that gets printed in the promotion booklet. All right, we're still waiting on word as far as if we are going with a virtual promotion ceremony or just postponing and waiting into the future. But once obviously that's been decided and put out, we'll be able to give you some clarification on that. All right. So again, this is not required. This is just for anyone who thinks that they might have a good motto, a good saying for your class. Put it in here, and I'll put these responses onto a form for you and your classmates to vote on. All right. We've already had 12. I haven't gotten to look over all of them. 13, right as I'm talking about it. But if you don't, obviously no need to submit. This isn't, like I said, a requirement. So language arts, Google form, chapter 10, writing response, and then the optional quizzes. And then for social studies, just keep on trucking with your decades project. All right. I hope that everyone has a wonderful rest of your day. It's almost Friday, which means it's almost the weekend. It looks like we're going to have a nicer day today, so I hope you all can get outside and enjoy the nicer weather for a little bit. and of course that everyone is staying safe and healthy. All right, I miss everyone. I'm hopeful to get to see all of you at some point soon, with the celebration moving on to high school and all that. But like I said, in the meantime, email myself and your other teachers with anything that you need. All right, I'll be back tomorrow. But until then, this has been Professor Blazek, and I will see you all next time.